The Federal Reserve System virtually controls the nation's monetary system. Yet it is accountable to no one. It has no budget, it is subject to no audit, and no congressional committee knows of or can truly supervise its operations. These are the words of the late Professor Murray N. Rothbard, economist and academic of the Ludwig von Mises Institute. The Institute is dedicated to the ideals of a free market and sound money. This program is dedicated to the memory of Murray N. Rothbard and his prolific work on money and banking. For more than 20 years, the living standards of middle-class Americans have steadily declined. Incomes have remained flat or fallen, and the opportunities and security we once took for granted have begun to fade. For most families, one income no longer pays the bills. It requires 2 or more incomes to afford a home, pay medical and child care expenses, and put children through school. Unless present trends change, young workers are unlikely to ever live as well as their parents. Good jobs with a future are harder to come by. Education doesn't count for what it once did. Taxes continue to rise, while Social Security is going bankrupt. Private pensions are no longer reliable. Economic volatility and uncertainty are on the rise. Politicians espouse numerous theories about the cause of this country's economic woes. Seldom, however, do these officials look below the surface. The roots of our economic ills can be traced to central banking and our present monetary system. The Federal Reserve claims to manage our money. Instead, it makes our money worth less and less every day. It has generated continuous and worsening business cycles and lowered our living standards.
It's really no different from a burglar in your house wanting to steal your money. That's what the Federal Reserve does. It depreciates your savings, it takes away your economic security, and it ought to be treated as an institution that does that rather than something of alleged benefit.
Money is supposed to serve as a reliable standard of economic value, not a source of instability. Until we restore sound money and take away the government's ability to debase it, we have little hope of restoring the freedom and prosperity that made America great.
And we really have a choice of what we want in money. Do we want money that's going to be losing its value every year, or do we want money that's going to be gaining in value? If you are happy with your money losing value, then you want the present system. If you want money to increase in value, then you want a gold standard.
What is money? As the good that makes exchange possible, it's the foundation of every economic activity. In the earliest times, people traded goods and services directly. This form of exchange is known as barter.
That is, if a fishing tribe desired to have maybe wheat, which they themselves did not produce, they would seek out other individuals that produced wheat, and then they would exchange their fish.
But barter had limitations in the marketplace.
Well, actually, people perceived pretty quickly problems with that direct exchange. If you wanted, for example, fish, and you had wheat, but the people who had fish didn't desire the wheat, you were stuck, okay? Unless you went out and found some other good, possibly berries, that everyone in that society consumed. Then you would trade your wheat for the berries in full confidence then that you could turn around and trade the berries for the fish or anything else that you desired.
Eventually, the most widely accepted goods in a society became valued for their use in indirect exchange. Money is simply another name for the most generally accepted medium of exchange. Throughout history, many goods have served as money. Feathers from the Quetzal bird were used for exchange by the Mayan Indians up to the 15th century in Central America. Tea leaves compressed into bricks were traded in East Asia through the 1800s. Wampum shells were money to North American Indians, while early American colonists traded beaver pelts, which had a high value both at home and abroad. Metal coins first emerged in Greece and Asia Minor during the 7th century BC. Gold and silver were valued for their use and beauty in jewelry and the decorative arts. They were durable, easily divisible, and limited in supply. These precious metals also had a high value-to-weight ratio, making them easily transportable.
You might think back, or we can think back to a time when iron was used as money, for example, in Africa. But imagine going into Sears Roebuck and trying to purchase, let's say, a lawnmower for $350. That would take a ton of iron, whereas it would only take an ounce of gold.
In 1536, less than 50 years after Christopher Columbus set foot on American soil, a Spanish mint in Mexico City struck the first coins made in the New World. These silver coins eventually found their way into the British colonies. Great Britain's mercantilist policies deliberately tried to keep precious metals out of America, so the Spanish milled dollar became the unofficial currency. It was often divided into 8 pieces for smaller transactions, hence the term pieces of 8, with 1/4 of the coin being 2 bits. In 1792, Thomas Jefferson adopted the dollar as this country's official monetary unit.
He looked around, he investigated to see what were the American people using as money, and that was the dollar. And so that's why that dollar became the standard of the United States. And we went onto a gold and silver standard and started minting gold coins with the American Eagle, $10 gold coin.
Jefferson, in particular, spoke eloquently of the dangers of paper money. During the War for Independence, the Continental Congress printed vast sums of paper money out of thin air to finance the Army. The diluted money supply naturally depreciated to almost nothing, leading to the phrase, "not worth a Continental."
The people who held on to these notes, who tended to be patriotic Americans, concerned about, wanted America to be free of British control, lost everything. Whereas the Tories, who wanted nothing to do with this American government money and immediately got rid of it, were benefited. And Pelatiah Webster, the first American economist, and others who looked at this saw that this paper money, unbacked by gold, was extremely dangerous.
As early as the 16th century in Europe, goldsmiths stored gold coins for their customers for a fee and issued receipts for the gold to the depositor. Thus began the use of paper as money.
In other words, if you came in and deposited 10 ounces of gold for safekeeping, you got back receipts in the amount of 10 gold ounces. Okay. And those receipts entitled you to instantaneously redeem that gold.
These receipts soon became widely accepted as a means of exchange, since it was easier and safer to use the receipts for significant transactions. This was the origin of banknotes as money substitutes. These first bankers then took this process one step further.
In effect, if the goldsmith had 1,000 ounces of gold and 1,000 ounces of legitimate receipts being held by the depositor of that gold, he could increase his profits by merely printing up another 1,000 ounces worth of receipts and lending them out. Okay. In which case you would effectively get 50% reserve banking or fractional reserve banking. Only a fraction, 50% of the receipts were now backed by gold.
There was no longer a 1-to-1 ratio of paper to gold. Now there could be 3 or 4 pieces of paper in circulation for every unit of gold in the vault. These bankers were no longer simply storing or warehousing gold for a fee. They were artificially inflating the money supply and loaning out these phony receipts at interest. This system became known as fractional reserve banking and was later transported to the early American colonies. It formed the root of American commercial banking and ultimately the Federal Reserve System.
This is a fraudulent system. It's not allowed in any other business.